Welcome to Buccaneers Insider Live, presented by Miller Lite. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. We already did this once this week. We needed an extra one because of Tom Brady coming back. And then now, of course, we have all the free agency craziness, which is always a little complicated for us being team media, that there's a lot of things that are reports out there but have not been necessarily officially announced by the team. So we're going to talk about definitely the ones that are officially announced, but I wanted to let you give a chance to explain a little bit about the things that we can talk around, shall we say?
Yeah, we had to have that emergency show, I guess you would say, on Monday because yes. Tom Brady stunned everybody with his announcement that he was going to play in 2022, which probably really affected everything that is happening this week as well. Yes. But just a couple hours after that, the legal tampering period began in the NFL, which is really the de facto start of free agency. And at that point, teams can start talking to the representatives of potential free agents, and they can go so far as to work out the structure of a deal. But they can't really communicate directly with the players, and they can't sign the deal, make it official, or announce anything until after the league year starts, which was yesterday at 4 o'clock. So you're going to see a lot of reports, as we did. And it's, most of it was good news. And however you get good news, it's still good news, right? But the team isn't going to say anything about it and make it official. They really can't. They're not allowed to until Wednesday after 4. And then after that, you have the extra layer of when you trade for a player or sign a new player, you usually have to do a physical first before that player signs it. You have to get them in town. You can't even call them to set up a plane flight until Wednesday at 4. So there's a little bit more of a time period until a lot of these reported things you're hearing actually become official and are announced by the team. And since we are part of the team, we can't tell you anything officially that this stuff is done. But we can talk about these reports. Right. So we're going to. And then I guess we could start with the stuff that has been official.
Yeah, we'll start with the things that we know are official and we can say. So first of all, Ryan Jensen coming back.
And Aaron Stinney.
And Aaron Stinney as well. Yeah. So let's start with the Ryan Jensen one and tell me what your thoughts are on him coming back and the timing and what that will mean, especially after Ali Marpet's retirement and this offensive line that did have a lot of questions.
Yeah, so Ali Marpet retired, and reportedly Alex Kappa is going to sign with the Bengals. So then you also had Ryan Jensen potentially hitting free agency. So to get your center, your Pro Bowl center, locked back in, somebody that works very well with Tom Brady, somebody that helps Tom Brady make adjustment calls at the line, obviously a very good center, just came back from his first Pro Bowl, really made that first 4-year deal with the Buccaneers very worthwhile. So another 3 years for him, that's great news. Then Aaron Stinney probably has a very good chance to start at one of the guard spots. And then one of the reported ones, I guess I'll skip ahead a little bit, one of the reported ones that we don't know officially yet, but that the Buccaneers have traded a 5th-round pick for New England guard Shaq Mason, who's been a very highly regarded guard for about 7 years now, pretty much started at right guard for all of that time, most of that time with the Patriots, including last year. So now all of a sudden your interior line looks pretty good, but especially because you have your guy right there in the middle, Ryan Jensen, back to kind of keep it all intact and coordinated.
And like we said, one of the other ones that we know is official is related to this topic is Aaron Stinney getting signed. So how do you think he factors in to that group? Is he being expected to start some, or is he still considered depth the way he was in recent years? What do you think that could look like?
I would think that Aaron Stinney has a very good chance. He's certainly one of the top candidates to step in at, say, maybe left guard, which he did when Ali Marpet was out for one game this past season. That was in Indianapolis, and unfortunately, Aaron himself got hurt in that game, so didn't get to play a whole lot. But we all remember the 2020 Super Bowl run when he stepped in for Kappa at right guard, started the last 3 games and really performed really, really well. So ever since then, the Buccaneers have felt like they have a guy that's a starting caliber player. It was just nice to have another one, right? But he just wasn't, nobody was getting hurt, thank goodness, and that's what you want. But now there's a chance for Aaron Stinney, and I think he takes hold of it and really runs with it.
It is incredible the way free agency things can happen so quickly, that where we were talking about not knowing at all what the interior of the line might look like, and now
it's set.
It's great, and it even has a little extra something in there potentially.
You've got Robert Hainsey, who drafted in the 3rd round last year, a very versatile guy. You got Nick Leverett, former undrafted guy who they like a lot. So all of a sudden that doesn't look so bad.
Right. And another one of the official things we can talk about is Carlton Davis signing a deal. So tell us what you think this means to this team and that defense.
Well, that's a big one because cornerbacks, especially 25-year-old cornerbacks who have shown the ability to be be a number 1 corner on the team, have shown the ability to, when they ask you to, shadow a guy like DeAndre Hopkins and really be a shutdown corner, who have shown that they can play man and zone. Carlton is a big guy with a lot of length, which is the type of cornerback that Todd Bowles likes. Those guys when they hit the open market, they're going to get a lot of attention. J.C. Jackson, for instance, from the Patriots, got a really big contract with the Chargers and probably had some other suitors as well. So for Carlton to come back, and he did admit that Tom Brady's decision return did factor into his decision. He wants to come back here because he likes it here and thinks he can win more championships here. But that's a big re-signing for the Buccaneers because it's hard to replace those guys.
So we have already seen how perfectly the timing worked out for Brady to announce when he did.
Probably not an accident.
Very handy for him to have done that to help with the recruiting of free agency. So now those are the official things that we can talk about. We know they've happened. How about some of these reports that are out there, some of the main ones that you took note of what they can mean for this team?
Well, I jumped ahead a little bit and already talked about the Shaq Mason trade, which came out of the blue and just seems like what an incredible move. It's actually the second time since Jason Light became GM that he's traded for a Patriots guard. And the last one was Logan Mankins, which worked. Logan was closer to the end of his career, but it still worked out pretty well. He made a Pro Bowl.
Yeah, and even, I mean, that I know that Ali Marpet always talked about what an influence Logan Mankins was on him. So Logan's a guy that, that move was better than just even what his production on the field was.
Right. So then also one of the biggest reports that we just got, actually this one just came in yesterday, was that Chris Godwin, who had gotten the franchise tag, has agreed to a 3-year deal. Again, these are the things that we can't officially announce, but we're just talking about the reports that we've heard. That would be great news because, for one thing, I would be willing to bet just about anything that the way that contract is structured, it actually will reduce his cap hit for this year, which is the year that they're really trying to save cap space. They're pushing some of it off in the future when they think the cap's going to be larger. Plus, if this potentially is Tom Brady's last year, this is obviously the biggest go-for-it year, right? So you're trying to create cap space. On the franchise tag, Chris would have counted about 19.2 against the cap. I'd be willing to bet just about anything that his cap hit for this year is going to be considerably less than that.
Right. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
So that's good news. Obviously, just having Chris Godwin back for 3 years would be fantastic news as well. Mike Evans is his contract still runs the next 2 years. So at least the next 2 years, you maintain that, if not the best, one of the best receiver tandems in the NFL. And then another report that we hope will be official at some point is that the Buccaneers signed Russell Gage, the wide receiver from the Falcons. That's kind of a pretty cool under the radar move because maybe he's not the biggest name on the market, but that guy had a really good year last year.
Yeah, I think that the Bucs fans that watch all those games remember watching the Falcons and that he was not a guy that we weren't worried about.
He had 11 catches for 130 yards against us in that game in Atlanta. And really over the last 8 weeks, they were running out of pass catchers. Calvin Ridley wasn't there. Julio Jones is no longer there. So he was kind of the de facto number one guy. And over the last 8 weeks of last season, he was 8th in the NFL in both catches and receptions. So this is a guy that has proven he can be productive. When you look at what the Bucs have, he's probably a really prime candidate to be the third receiver in that Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, third receiver. Antonio Brown had a lot of production in that role. And I think the Buccaneers would like another productive guy in that role. But he could also help you a little bit as insurance. Chris Godwin is returning from that torn ACL. Now, he's the kind of guy that's probably going to go at it so hard. Wouldn't surprise me to see him be there week 1. But if for some reason he's not completely ready to go at the beginning of next season, you have a guy now, assuming these reports become official at some point, that has proven he can step in for a number one receiver and be productive. So it kind of helps you in a couple ways there. And also reports that Brashad Perryman returned.
That was the other one. So yeah, again, and it's so funny. We talked about this in our last week's show, and especially in our first road to the draft last week, of what are the 2 areas you really think might need to be addressed in some way, and it was the interior line and it was wide receiver. And so with all these reports, again, we can't say that they're official, but if these reports turn out to be true, suddenly you're feeling really good about these areas that had a lot of question marks.
Yeah, and the Buccaneers were kind of getting a little thin at tight end too, but I think we all saw the video yesterday of Rob Gronkowski in a barbershop.
Where all major news breaks, I got to go start getting my hair cut more often. You never know what you might learn there.
But if that ends up being the case, if he does choose to return, then your tight end position suddenly looks a lot better.
Speaking of that one of the other reports out there was that potentially O.J. Howard would not be a Buccaneer next year, that there were reports that he would be going to the Bills. So looking at that, and let's say if Gronk were to come back but lose O.J., how do you feel about that tight end room? Do you think it's set? Do you think they need to add another one?
They definitely need to add another one, though it could be maybe Cody McElroy steps up. But the role that O.J. was playing for us in the second half of last season, Gronk was your guy that was usually out there for 80-90% of the snaps, and O.J. was playing a lot of snaps in 2 tight end sets, and he was actually blocking pretty well. He didn't really get a lot of targets down the stretch, but he was playing a lot in 2 tight end sets, and Cam Brate also plays in 2 tight end sets with Rob, but he's more of a pass catcher and a red zone threat. So you probably want another guy for your 12 packages that can block well. So I think the Buccaneers will be looking for another tight end because I don't think Cody McElroy is really a blocking tight end type.
Okay, and we had a couple Facebook questions here. One was from Christina, asked anything happening with JPP or Sue, and then I know that Shawnee was also asking any chance JPP is retained. So what do we know about that group?
No, I haven't heard anything about those guys. I remember as far as it comes with Ndamukong Suh, I remember the last couple of years. I think he's the kind of guy who is in no rush. He will take his time to examine where he's at, what he wants to do, if he wants to come back here, and decide where he's at, and does he want to, and just not do it in a hurry. He seems like a methodical, smart guy that's going to figure it out, and so it could be a little while before we know if there's any movement on that. I think the JPP issue will probably be both sides determining, are injuries going to continue to be a limiting factor for him as they have been the last couple of years?
Okay.
So, but we haven't heard anything on them yet.
Our last one is from Rodney here, asking if there's a chance we could get the Honey Badger, which also brings up, I realize one of the reports we did not talk about was that Jordan Whitehead would no longer be a Buccaneers. Well, again, just a report that we don't know is official yet. But if that were true, how do you look at the safety position? Do you see them adding somebody else? This was Rodney's suggestion. I know that we'd have some pretty incredible hair/honey badger vibes, considering that was what Mike Edwards was also called at times.
Okay.
So yeah, tell me, what do you think about that safety position?
Well, it does seem like the Bucs will probably need some kind of addition at safety. I would suspect that they intend to start Mike Edwards with Jordan Whitehead reportedly moving on to the Jets, and you obviously have Antoine Winfield. But I think you want at least 3 of them that you feel good about starting. Now, Tyrann Mathieu, who's the Honey Badger, played the last few years in Kansas City. It doesn't look like Kansas City is retaining him. They signed Justin Reed and give him a pretty good contract, which says to me that they couldn't meet the financial demands that Tyrann Mathieu thinks he's going to get, which is why I would say you can't count anything out with Jason Light and this crew, right? I mean,
yes.
Who could have seen all the moves of the last couple of years? So I'm not going to sit here and say, no way, it can't happen.
Yep.
But it doesn't seem like it would be very easy. If his financial demands are a little too much for the Chiefs, and the Buccaneers are, like a lot of teams, are working hard to restructure some contracts and structure some of their new contracts to create cap space, there isn't a ton of cap space.
Yeah.
Now, as you've seen from the Saints day after day, there's always ways to create more cap space, but every time you do, you're kicking some of that cap hit down the road, and that's the plan, but you don't want to overdo it, right? And at some point, there's a limit. So I think that would be difficult. It would be awesome, but I don't think it would be easy to do. All
right, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Buccaneers Insider Live, presented by Miller Lite. After this, we are going to record our next Road to the Draft, and that is where we're going to talk about how all of these moves we just talked about could potentially affect the draft and what they might want to do there. So if that was one of your questions, make sure you stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.